If you found this podcast, chances are you're a high achiever and you're successful. But now you're stuck and stressed, and you realize that everything you've created hasn't given you the fulfillment and the joy you thought it would. This is where we discuss the keys of high performance mindset and stepping into the next best version of yourself. Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast, where we bring you stories to inspire you and strategies to help tap into your potential and become your best self. I'm your host, Ian Bowen, and today I am joined by my friend, Darylyn Silva Costa. Amongst other things, Darylyn is a nutrition and wellness guru for the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. She's a master nutrition coach and an expert in the psychology of eating. She's also a mother of four and a woman who has an incredible transformation journey. Darylyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. So as we were kind of talking about before we started recording, I'm super excited to have this conversation just because you are just an amazing individual and a very interesting person as well. And before we hop into your amazing story, one of the reasons that I want to start with your story is as I've been moving into this speaking space and this coaching space, there's something that I've learned called the ETR, which is earn the right, right? So all of our experts out there and gurus out there, there's a difference between the people that know what they're talking about and the people that know what they're talking about. Right. The latter being the people who have actually experienced and gone through what they've talked about and not just read about it and studied about it. Mm-hmm. With that being said, you've had an amazing transformation story of your own. I'd like to talk about that, some other things as well that you shine some light on with your expertise. So for those of us who don't know who Darylyn is and the story behind her journey, if you could enlighten us a little bit and tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, the story everyone is always kind of most interested in is I had a huge weight loss, about 180 pounds. And I did most of that on my own, figuring things out. Like I like to say, like bumping into walls. Nope, that's not the way. Oh, that's not the way. And just kind of feeling my way through it until I found Fit Body Bootcamp. They actually kind of gave me my first, like, do this. And this is a great direction to go. But mostly I figured it out on my own. And I heard so many narratives serve me. And I could see how they were robbing other people of their agency and their autonomy to figure this out on their own. And I kind of became interested in what it would look like if it wasn't like that. And so I get to talk a lot about that. Beyond that, I'm a wife of 28 years, my husband Dennis, and we have 4 children, 3 college age, thriving, smart, remarkable humans, and 1 17-year-old remarkable human who's also a 17-year-old boy. And so he's blooming into a remarkable adult. Yeah, he's getting there. He'll get there. I homeschooled all of my children. And so whenever I do something, I kind of go big. I'm not an all or nothing person, but once I decide that I'm like in it, like I'm very in it, and I'll go full on. So anyhow, we have a gym, we have nutrition certifications, we have clients, we have children, like we have friends and family, like we're knit together to this beautiful like life that we have. So even though folks love to talk to me about weight loss, like there's so much more to me and to them. And I spend a lot of time uncovering that for other people, that there's so much more to them than just their weight loss goal. So that's who I am.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you talk about certifications, as we kind of mentioned earlier, you are an expert in food psychology or eating psychology. And for those of us who don't really understand what that means, can you kind of unpack what that certification, what that title actually is all about?
Yeah, so I actually have a certification through an organization called the Psychology of Eating, and it's actually quite a long certification. Um, it it touches on the things about nutrition that is more intangible and more experiential. The way that we view food, the way that we view ourselves with food, our experience around controlling our lives and how we apply that to our food. So often, when we don't feel control over our lives, we don't exercise control over our nutrition. Or if we do not have control over our lives, we tend to exercise excessive control over our food. And so it's just the way that we think about food and how it applies to our actual life, and then how we exercise that. And for so many people in the fitness industry, food is nutrition. It's fuel. You eat this, not that. You have this much, not that much. You have a cookie a few times a year, and you're fine, right? Like it's this very like black and white. There's not a lot of gray there, and there's not a lot of focus there.
Yeah.
But for most of my clients, certainly, because you attract who you were or who you are. Um, and I think just worldwide, if you pay attention to the actual conversations and not just what we think the conversation should be, you discover that people have a lot of emotion attached to their food, a lot of family narratives attached to their food, a lot of behavior attached to their food. And most of that comes from like, there's a lot of shame around how we feel about food. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of would, should, coulds. And it affects how we behave around our food privately and publicly. And it plays out in other ways as well. But food is just something that every single one of us need. There is no escaping food. There is no escaping nutrition. There is no holiday without food. There is no family member who, like it's everywhere all the time, no matter what. It's very much a part of our society. And so, whereas if somebody is suffering from other addictions, there are ways they can turn that addiction off, through behavior change, through environment. But with food, it's a much heavier lift because everyone needs it. And your addiction for many people, or their dysfunction, or struggles through the actual psychology of it, is something they have to visit every single day, every single meal, every single hunger pain, and there's judgments attached to it. So being an expert, that's what they call you, an expert in the psychology of eating, I don't feel like I'm ever going to be an expert, but I think I do have a deeper understanding about how food affects us in every way of life. Like it's not nutrition, and it's not just fuel. It has so much more gravity than that.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear you talk about it that way, because I've always looked at food as how you mentioned it, being in the fitness industry, it's just fuel. But I've always had that thought process about food dating back to when I was in the hospital and recovering from my surgery, and I needed strength. And for me, I was in the hospital for almost a month, and it was hospital food, so it wasn't the best tasting food. But I just looked at it as like I just need to eat this to power my body so I can do the things that I need to do to be able to recover. And ever since then, it was just like, well, food is just it's just fuel to me. And my wife, who Dana, amazing cook and a foodie, she hates when I say food is just fuel. Like she's like, no, you have to enjoy it and taste it. But anyway, I digress. Here
It's
we are.
100% true. Yes. You
Yeah.
guys are a great portrait of society and food. And this, you guys make it work beautifully, but there is this friction that exists.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's a very different lens, I think, for men than there is for women in terms of how they look at food and the judgment and the shame and all of that what you just mentioned. So I'm hoping, I'm sure this could be like a hours long conversation, but I was hoping that you could maybe unpack a bit of that, of the differences of just the psychology around food for a man in terms of versus a woman?
Sure. If you wouldn't really have to look much further than if you have children. I know you have all boys, right? I
One
have,
girl.
you do
Five
have a girl.
boys. Yeah,
Okay.
5 boys, 1 girl.
Okay. So I have 2 girls, 2 boys. And my 17-year-old boy eats probably as much as our entire family. And then he eats his portion. Like he eats an ungodly amount of food. Um, and he thinks it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's like he wants it, he eats it, he makes it into muscle. He's like brags about how much he eats. Like it's a thing. Like I realized brownie mixes were missing out of the pantry yesterday, and I was like, I had 2 brownie mixes. I used them. Both of them? Yes, when? Last week. Hudson, you were only alone 2 days last week. He went through 2 brownie boxes in 2 days, right? And he's like, yeah, I did. It's cool, right? I had 2 daughters, totally different experience, right? Now, I don't feel like I've pushed a bunch of shame around food on them because I've been pretty mindful of it, but everywhere else does.
Yeah.
So they approach it with judgment, with worry, with shame, and some women especially will take that and they'll run with it to be like very healthy, almost obsessively healthy, weighing and measuring everything, logging everything. Like there's that extreme. And then there's the other extreme where it's like, I can't, like, I don't even know what to do. So I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And they like default into this other zone. And so for women, we associate so much of our worth with how we look because the world tells us to. And how we look is so affected by the kinds of food we eat, the quantities of food we eat, how we eat it, whether we eat it alone or with other people, right? Like all of that for women is a much bigger deal. Whereas men, like my son, can eat 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 calories. And he's packing it on with muscle. He's got abs. His quads are ridiculous. Like it's amazing. If we did that, it would be not the same story because our bodies metabolize it differently, obviously. But then in the world, to be a woman that eats 5,000 calories or 6,000 calories, like that will show up differently in her body. And we have to judge that, right? And so there's this calories are just calories. And I spend a lot of my time talking with my clients around like that. When we think calories are bad as women, calories are just energy. And men are allowed to believe that calories are just energy, but women are not allowed to believe that. We have to believe that the calories will do whatever they're going to do in our body, and it will change our bodies. And changing our bodies changes our worth. And changing our worth leads to shame and fear around food. And so it's just this, and it just goes on and on and on. So I may not have trained my daughters to worry about their body, which I was very mindful of. I'm sure I was wildly unsuccessful, completely, but I really tried to do that. But I'm just one person, and there's a whole world out there. And it sounds like kind of silly, but like at this point in my life, like I'm like, it is my mission to change it. Like, I know I can't change the whole world, but like I will do it one day, one client, one fitness program, one nutrition program, one counseling session, one gym at a time, because it just has to be changed. And when men and women are just so different.
Yeah. And like you had mentioned, as you were talking, I'm envisioning, because a lot of our kids are in elementary through high school age right now. I'm mentioning like, or I'm thinking like at lunchtime. And if a boy sits down with a tray full of food, he's looked at like a hoss, like, yeah, look how much I can eat, right? Because that's what boys say. You need to eat so you can be strong and build that muscle. But if a girl sat down with all that food, people be looking at her with the side eye, like, what is going on? Like, it's not socially acceptable for a woman to sit down with a big plate of food and go to town. Why is that?
Well, my 20-year-old daughter would say, it's the patriarchy. Like, I don't know the answer. I don't actually know the answer, but it definitely is the narrative of the world. And with women, we're free to, as like just a society, I feel like people are free to make up stories about what's happening. So if my son sits down with a 5,000 calorie day's worth of food, and I sit down with a 5,000 calorie day's worth of food, people will tell different stories about the exact same circumstance, right? So if I'm 140 pounds, if I'm a healthy weight, but I'm sitting down with 5,000 calories of food, well, they're forced to make the assumption that I'm bulimic or I have some other sort of disordered eating or eating disorder, right? Whereas with a dude doing it, like you said, he's hot, like he's strong, like that's what a good boy needs. And with women, we're told like, food does have such emotional capacity with women that then like we are forced to make up stories around it. We do it to ourselves. The world does it to us. Our mothers have done it to us. Like it just is everywhere. And it's just, I spend more time talking about fear and shame and perfectionism and on and off again, thinking all of that with my clients than I do about protein. I will go an entire week of appointments with clients and never talk about actual nutrition.
Are you talking more so than the emotions around, the feelings around food?
Absolutely. Why they know what to do, but they can't do it. Why they think the calories aren't right, how they were doing so well, but now they're not. I always start strong, but I can never finish. Like all of these things. And it's really, most of it is because of unrealistic expectations they've put on themselves around food and nutrition and the shame and guilt and fear they have around food. Like that's the magic bullet that no one's talking about in fitness and nutrition. And so that's why when we give our clients plans and we're like, I coach Zach, 25 years old, why doesn't she just follow the plan? And it's like, well, because the plan's awesome, but she doesn't have the capacity to do that for so many reasons. And so it really does take someone who knows, like actually knows what it is that's holding you back. And that's what a good coach does, is dial into like, what is it that's holding us back here? Because I can point the way, and that's awesome because the way is the way. But if there's a sign in the road of where I'm pointing and they can't see past it, we're never going to get there. And so that's where good coaching comes in, is getting like in the deeper edges of who the client is, what's holding them back from making progress.
And would you say that what you just mentioned, would you say that is a common denominator, underlying theme for most of the clients that you work with?
Yes, for sure. And like I said, I do recognize that probably I attract a lot of that because of what we put out there and, the messages that we send and the emails that I send, and like like attracts like. And so I think I might have a higher percentage of that, but make no mistake that like there are plenty of me's out there that need help and plenty of me's out there that have given up. And so in our brand, I really believe, like in the Fit Body brand, like I really believe that like we're starting to attract more of those clients because they see that we are different. They see that the messaging is different. They see that we're talking about mindset. And some folks don't want to talk about mindset. Like you get them in for onboarding and they're like, I just want you to tell me what to eat. If you'll just tell me what to eat, I'll eat it. Right. And it's like the next week they're like, I'm not doing it. I don't know why I'm not doing it. And I'm like, that's the mindset part you need. Like, I know you think you don't need mindset, but that thing that's keeping you from progress, that gap is this like narrative around why you're not doing it, is like fear, shame, anxiety, on again, off again thinking, perfectionism, like that, all of that is in between you and where you want to be. So we have to deal with that. That is the psychology of eating. And it exists for all of us. Even someone like you or my son, like you have a psychology of eating. Yours is like your soundtrack around that is like food is fuel, right? My son's is like food is muscle, right? How much can I possibly eat? Right? That's his like what, like we're in Texas now and we see signs that are like 76-ounce steak free. Yeah, it's free if you eat the 76-ounce steak. Like this is like, there's probably not a lot of women showing up to eat the 76-ounce steak, right?
Yeah.
It's all big, burly men, fit men, big men, whatever, men showing up to eat the 76-ounce steak.
Yes.
And that's acceptable, right? So everyone has a psychology, a mantra, a soundtrack around eating. For women, it tends to be negative. And the women that are attracted to fitness also tend to have this more like mono view of it. Like they see it, they've always been fit. They see it like fuel. They see it like muscle, like many of them. And then there's those of us who are like knocking at the door of modern fitness and saying like, okay, but if you have a body, then fitness is for you. And so if fitness is for everyone with a body, then where are we going to make space for all of these people with disordered eating, with thoughts and shame and fear around food? Like, where do they belong? Do they just belong at home feeling bad about themselves? Do they just belong in their car eating McDonald's? Like, do they just belong in situations where they're starving themselves and feel proud of themselves for not eating all day? Like, where do they belong? And if we as a fitness brand are going to look at them and say, oh, come to our brand, be a part of our brand, then we're going to need to invite all of them in and be the fitness space that other brands have excluded by their mono thinking. And so that is where I am trying to fill a gap.
And you're doing a tremendous job of it as you push that message out that you're talking about. It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner, backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. So with all of these challenges, let's say, that we have to deal with in terms of being in the fitness industry and learning how to deal with our clients in a let's say, a more educated way, for those clients who, let's say, or for those individuals who just aren't going to make it to the gym. They're not going to go to the gym because that's uncomfortable for them, but they still want to live a better lifestyle and they want to improve their nutrition. Like where do they start? What's a good place for them to start? Maybe, and you mentioned the word habits, and I know that's huge. Where do they start to, and I'm not going to use the word try because that's a powerless word. Where do they start to change some of their behavior to be able to take steps forward in stepping into that healthier version of themselves?
Oh, I love that. I actually think that so much of it just begins with their thoughts. So when you start to think of yourself as a healthier person, like I'm a healthy person, I'm whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. I'm a rich person. I'm a fiscally responsible person. I'm a person with good relationships, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. When you start attaching, like we all have experience with someone, whether interpersonal or like in a more learned way from afar, who's doing what we want to do and who's figured out the thing we want to figure out. Mm-hmm. And by adopting like this mantra of like, what would a healthy person do? Like it is really actually astonishing how quickly you can make progress because you're taking yourself out of your own judgment. You're taking yourself out of your own, like all the reasons I can't do it. And you're just saying like, if I were this other person, whoever it might be, and like it's really helpful if you have a person, again, like either interpersonally or from afar, that you can say, like, what would they do? And then do the thing in the small, this is the most important part, in the smallest way possible. So when you wake up in the morning and you go to make your coffee, and it's like, I'm going to have my coffee, and we're all just like, coffee, 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 right? But saying to yourself, like, what would Darylyn do, right? Well, Darylyn probably would drink 20 ounces of water first, right? And then deciding, like, would that feel, is that doable for me? And just doing that over and over and over, and just adopting this, like, get out of your own story, get out of your own drama, get out of your own self, look at it from this other person's perspective on, and your perspective on their life, and see if you can make that mesh in the smallest way possible. I think that's really powerful, because we all do know what to do, but we make it so big. And, you know, when I say they know what to do, like, it's not everything, but they take they exclude themselves out of it because they could never possibly be like, and I'll just use myself, Darylyn, because I don't know who else to use. They can never possibly be like Dana. They can never possibly be like Michael or Ian, right? But could they be in this moment between coffee and water? Could they be Darylyn and have water? And just that small, like, and then doing that over and over, like, that's really powerful. And you don't have to work out, and you don't have to have equipment, and you don't have to have time. Like, you were going to drink coffee anyway, so drinking some water first is going to get you there. And just doing that over and over. And I find that while in many ways I've mastered the nutrition and fitness portion of it, I don't know if it's ever complete. It's an ongoing journey, but that part takes less energy from me at any rate. But like, there's other areas of my life, like abundance and wealth and you know, financial growth and all of those things, that like, those things are still widely a mystery to me in a big way, like in big ways. And so then I think to myself, like, what would this person do? What would this person say? And in this one moment, what would be the right choice? And it gets me progress. And getting progress is everything. You know, making that little bit that gets you some momentum makes persisting easier. And so I guess that's it.
So
it's always a box, though.
It sounds like what you're talking about is making little micro movements in terms of shifting your identity anyway, or attaching your identity to something or someone to get you to start doing those small habit changes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's those moments where you do that reflection, like, who is this person I want to be like, right? Or this person, this portion of their life that I'd liked for myself. And sometimes we don't even know that exists. So for example, I was reflecting on this earlier in the month because I was journaling on it, and I was like, whoa, I remembered working out at a Fit Body boot camp. And I was on the ground on my back doing these stupid crunches. And I heard the owner, who was my coach, talking to another client and said, yes, I just hired someone to help me in the office. Like, she's going to do admin tasks and she's going to help with whatever. And I remember in that moment, very satisfied in my life, like not thinking I wanted anything else. When he said that, I went, oh, I wish I would have known about that. Like, that sounds so fun. And that was the first time in my whole life that I thought, like, oh, I want to do that. And in fitness, right? Like, what? When your potential is speaking to you, right? And while you're doing stupid crunches, right? So it's like, in that moment, I was like, oh, that's something that now I'm kind of sad, because I was friendly with the owner. Like, he knew I would be awesome at that, and he didn't ask me, and gosh, why? But really, that told me that I needed to then make this move in the direction of fitness. And I kind of forgot about it. But it's in those small moments, and I wish I had been a journaler earlier and more consistent, because it's those moments where you kind of go, that's something I want. So then when you know what you want, then we probably do know someone in our circles, or again, right now, the world is so connected from afar that has done the thing, and then trying to find small ways to make progress. And I am very passionate about the small ways.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're touching on basically paying attention to the universe when it taps you on the shoulder,
Yep.
right? And there's so many times in our lives that that happens, but we have blinders on because we are just so focused on either consuming all the things or doing all the things or just being busy that
Izzy.
we don't pay attention to the things that can actually change our lives and lead us to the road of what I know that you are very passionate about is being happy,
Yeah.
right? Because I know that one of your things is like you're known for keep it simple, keep it real, but also keep yourself happy.
Happy. Happy is, and what is it? And it changes over time, right? What the happy is. But knowing, like, for me today, this would moves me in that direction. A few years ago, I got to do a coaching session with Brendan Burchard, and he works really hard on your three words. And he wants you, and I do, to have them popping up on your phone multiple times a day, reminding you about who you are now, but also how the future you should be informing your present you. What we usually do is we let our past
Mhm.
inform our present, right? And he spends a lot of time coaching us on, like, let who you're becoming inform your present. It's a whole shift, right? Well, my words were happy, free, because freedom is a huge, huge win of mine, and undeniable. Like, that's like, those are my three words. Like, I want to be undeniable. If I'm speaking, I want people to, like, be like, she's going to tell us something interesting. She's going to tell us something important. She's going to tell us something that is going to, like, change things. And so, like, I want, and whether I'm talking about how we're running businesses, how we're homeschooling our children, how we're parenting teenagers, how we're changing our health and fitness, how we're changing the industry, for an individual or an industry, like those, like, if I'm speaking, I want to be undeniable, right? And so I want to be happy. I want to feel content. What's happy? Sometimes happy is a big bank account. Sometimes happy is an amazing night's sleep. Sometimes happy is turning my nutrition rings green, right? But really recognizing happy in the small moments, and then celebrating them, integrating them, because so many of us who do well, high performers, like, we just, like, blow through these wins. Like, we're just blowing through them. And then we wonder why we don't feel satisfied and happy. And it's like, well, we never integrated them. We never recognized them. We never, like, sat with them and we're like, like, look at me. Right? Because sometimes, and especially as women, we're told not to do that. Right? But, like, to look at it and be like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And I know I did it because I remember when I celebrated back there, and look how much further I am now. So happiness changes in the moment. Joy is, like, everlasting. But that happiness, like, that's one of my three words, because I just want to feel happy about the direction I'm going and the place that I'm in. And I want to, like, feel powerful looking at it from, like, looking back at where I am now. Like, I want my future self to be looking at where I am now and, like, integrating that and then moving me in this next direction. And there's only one way to do it, and it's from happiness. If you're not happy, people think, like, you do sometimes have to hit rock bottom to make progress. But if you're not happy, like, nobody stays miserable and makes progress. Nobody does. And it's a lie we tell ourselves, right? Like, if I'm hard on myself, if I'm sad about it, if I stay angry, but it's not true. Like, you have to do it from a positive place, or you'll stop. Like, you'll stop.
Yeah.
So happy is important.
You have mentioned the word future a couple times there, and that makes me
Mm-hmm.
think of the word vision, because when we think about stepping into our next best self, we are always thinking about moving forward. But I know one of the things that you talk about, and you talked about this recently actually on the Beyond the Scale podcast, is forget finding your why and start developing a vision.
Mhm.
Can you break that down for us? And what does that mean? What does it mean to forget finding your why? Because, of course, that's been, we'll call it a buzz term or a buzz philosophy for a long time. What's your why?
Mhm.
Why should we forget that and focus on developing a vision?
So whys are super important. And if you go through any nutrition coaching or coaching course, they're going to tell you about the whys. They're going to talk to you about the 5 whys, like, I want to lose 20 pounds. Why? I want to fit back in my jeans. Why? Right? We're going to go through it. And it's supposed to get us to this place where we're like, that's so compelling. I'll do it.
Mhm.
The trouble with a why is that it's only compelling in certain moments. It's only compelling. So if your why is I want to fit in cute clothes. I want to like look cute when I go on date nights, right? That is compelling on the nights when you're preparing for date night, right? But if you've been in Lululemons and a tank top for 6 weeks straight and your husband and you haven't had a date night with 6 children, right, for weeks, then that why is really not interesting when we've got Ben and Jerry's right here and a possible date night sometime in the future when our children are grown. Not compelling. A why, if you decide to use whys, have lots. Have many of them, make them compelling, and have them be where you can plug them in your everyday life. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And you're remembering. A wellness vision, or like we call them destination postcards, is like where the heck you're going, what it will look like, what it will feel like, what are you wearing, how do you sleep, how do you wake up, where do you eat, how do you vacation, where do you work, who are you teaching, it is a full-on vision. And when you do that, this part of our brain, the RAS, the reticular activating system, like it starts going to work looking for opportunities to prove that you are doing the thing. So this is just a little like piece into Darylynn's vision. Then I read it every morning. I try to read it every evening before I finish work, but mostly I'm tired and I close my book and I'm like, okay, we're good. But I do try. But my wellness vision, one of the things on my wellness vision is that I will enjoy treats that I feel are worth it without fear or guilt. Now, for someone like you that views food as fuel, like that might sound like a contrite thing to have on a vision, right? But for me, who like food has been an issue for me, having that on my wellness vision, when I went to Boston and I was introduced to Mike's pastry shop that has been open for 50 years, and I had this amazing whoopie pie, right? And I was loving my whole life because of it. It was so awesome. And I was like, this is my wellness vision. Like it says I will travel for business and pleasure. I was there on business. And I will enjoy treats that I find worth it without fear or guilt. And so in that case, it invited me to have probably a 600-calorie pastry. But in so many ways, like it keeps me from enjoying treats that are not worth it, that are not important to me, because I will have guilt around food that I eat that isn't worth it to me, right? And when you have one in all the areas of your life, and as I read through mine, which is on a single page, I read through it and I can see my grandchildren, which I don't have yet. And I can see myself in France getting my passport stamped. And I can see myself, doing, climbing, Half Dome again. And I can see the things I'm doing. I can see myself teaching. I can see myself speaking. And so doing that, when I have struggles with my business, like it's okay because that's where I'm going, right? That's where I'm going. If I have a why to have a lot of money, right? That's compelling. Everyone wants to have a lot of money. But if I see it as a way to freedom out there in the future where I'm speaking, teaching, doing podcasts, like all of that sort, then it's like, oh, it doesn't matter that I'm struggling today because like that's my future self is deciding who I am today in this moment. And today in this moment, I'm going through a low part in my business. Should that be the case? And so that's kind of how that wellness vision works. And it has to be very like inclusive of like, another part of mine says like, when I come into a room, people feel warm and they're better for me having been there, right? Like, I don't want it just to be that like I'm smart and I gave them some good tips. Like, I want them to feel loved and I want them to feel seen. And so including all of these different areas, then I'm like, when I'm talking to people, I'm focusing on how can I make them feel warm and how can I make them feel seen and how can I like understand them better. And sometimes that's better education, sometimes that's better communication skills, sometimes that's slowing down, right? But they're always, that vision is always feeding who I am today. So speaking to you today is feeding my future vision of like, I'm going to be speaking and I'm going to be doing podcasts and people are going to want my time. And so I feel like going into the rest of my day today, like my future self is informing who I am today instead of just letting the past self, the 330-pound version of myself, inform who I am today, which is what most people do, right? Most people let the abuse, the illness, the setbacks define who they are. And I'm fine talking about my fat loss and I'm fine talking about my fitness journey, but only in the way that it's going to help inform somebody else about where they're going and what they can do. After that, I'm about like, who is that person over there in my wellness vision and how the heck do I get justification and validation for her today in the things I'm doing in my day on my calendar. And so it's super powerful. The trouble with so many of our clients, is they come to us and they can only see this far into the future. And again, it's our job to help them cast a vision. What does it look like when we get to that? What kind of people do you hang out with? How do you get to work? What kind of car do you drive? Do you walk for your lunch? Do you pack your lunch? Like, getting into the nitty gritty of who that person is gets their brain looking for opportunities to prove that person will come. And it's so powerful. So powerful. That was a long answer.
That's a great answer because I mean, again, you're talking about shifting your identity because you're right because our emotions are the result of past experiences, right? So again, what we feel is always from what we experience. So again, you're working from the past, that past self, whatever that is, whether it's that trauma, whether it's that struggle, whether it's that guilt, that shame. And it's so important for us to break away from that and shift our mindset to be thinking about the things that we want to achieve, the things that we want to become. And like you said, start pulling that reality towards us.
Yep.
But I find that, the clients that I've worked with over the many years that I've been in the fitness industry struggle with that because, again, they're so stuck and usually talking about, moms and women, because that's who I've dealt with the most of my fitness career.
Sure.
They're so busy taking care of everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have time to focus on them, or they may feel guilty because they're taking care of littles. So, what do you say to those women to help them break out of that perception of who they should be and start working on the person that they want or need to be?
Especially for mothers, like, we can't grow, like, the fruit that we are will determine the fruit that we produce. And so it got really real to me starting when I started raising my girls, especially, was like they were watching me and what I was doing was going to be who they were in so many ways. And if it wasn't who they wanted to be, like, they would spend the rest of their life trying to, go against that. And so I think about when women are in abusive relationships or in terrible jobs or, don't think they're important enough to get a workout or don't think they're important enough to have like clothes that fit them, right? Like, is that what you would want for your daughter? And inevitably, the answer is no. Like, we want the best for our daughters. And yet, and we know the power of great examples because we can all talk about that teacher or that mentor or that professor or that friend or that mom of a friend who was a great example to us. So we know the power of that, but we just think like, I just thought like, how will my daughters know they're unstoppable or amazing if I don't try and show that I'm unstoppable and amazing? And the same is true for our fitness. Like if we don't take time to plan our food and get our workouts in, and even in the smallest way, then we are telling them essentially that they aren't important enough to plan their food or get their workout in. And because they will be modeling us. And again, if they aren't modeling us, they will be spending the rest of their life trying to not model us. And not because they don't love us, but because it just doesn't feel good for them to not take care of themselves. And so for me as a mom, that has been super compelling to think like, do I want this for them? And I would never stay in a terrible relationship for my children because that doesn't serve them. And I would never not take care of myself in the name of my children because that doesn't serve them. So like if I'm spending my life serving my children, what is the actual best way I can serve my children? And then also removing our children as excuses to behave poorly is really powerful, because I see women do that all the time. And sometimes it's because they're in mama bear mode and they're acting ridiculous, in the name of their children and protecting their children. And it's like, actually, I think you're doing more damage right now than you are helping them. And the same is true, like in this like way that, I can't possibly because I'm taking care of my children. And it's like, is that true? And one of my favorite, coaching questions is that true? And almost always just asking like that, those three little words, like get people going, well, gosh, is it true that I don't have time? Like I had time to do these other things. Do I really not have time? And then recognizing like, if you don't make it a priority for yourself, then your children will not. Like they just won't. They only have so many choices. And if that's what you've modeled for them for 18 years, that's what you're going to get.
Right. So true. So true. Man, Darylyn, you are such a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I just love your philosophies and how you think. How can our listeners and viewers get more of you?
Get more of me. That's like, I don't feel like people want to get more of Darylyn. This is new. It's new, Ian. Again, like back to like girls, like we're told like, we're too big, we're too opinionated, we're too loud, right? Like, and now it's paying off, baby.
Yeah, we need more of your opinions and we need more of your voice. So
that's kind. I can be found on Instagram at Her Fit Body Coach. And on Facebook, you can look it up as Her Fit Body Coach, but also Darylyn Silva Costa.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we'll get those links in the show notes as well. And Darylyn, I just want to thank you so much again for spending time with us today and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for tuning into this episode. And as we always end off, I just want to remind you guys that it is so important to stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment or two. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.